Prime Minister Stephen Harper leaves for a 5-day trip to China today. Ottawa hopes the high-level meeting will help heal a rift that's been growing between Canada and its #2 trading partner over the past few years over some rather thorny issues. Since the last state visit in 2012, Canada has barred Chinese state-owned companies from further investments in the oil sands, or at least said we'd make it more difficult. We've raised concerns in the media about buying technology from Chinese telecom company Huawei. We blame Beijing for a cyber attack on Canada's National Research Council and turned down an invitation to enter free trade negotiations with China, saying it was too busy with other trade deals. Paul Evans is a professor at the Institute of Asian Research at the University of British Columbia and the author of Engaging China, Myth, Aspiration and Strategy in Canadian Policy, From Trudeau to Harper. Great to have you with us.
Wonderful to be with you.
So let's start with where things do stand, because when we catalog the issues we have, they can seem big, and it can seem as though we actually aren't getting along very well. It's a rather important place economically. How would you say Canada is doing in terms of forging bonds with China?
I'd say the Canada-China relationship is on balance positive. Many good things happening at the societal level, some parts of the economy, but it's also a precarious relationship right now. The federal caucus and cabinet are conflicted about what to do with China, not in the small matters of economics, but on the big economic picture that you painted a few moments ago. So it's a time of a desire to do some things, but I might characterize them as small ball rather than going for home runs or even doubles.
And what would the home runs look like if we wanted to get serious about forging a closer relationship with China? Is it free trade? Is that the out of the park kind of move?
I'd say that would be a triple, if not a home run. I think in general that the conservative approach to China has focused very heavily on economics, commercial issues. But they have not gone for the free trade possibilities at this stage. The views, the rules on state-owned investments in the energy sector and Chinese investment have really kept it into a pretty small scale of activities. Positive, to be sure, but pretty small scale.
When we think about some of the issues we have around human rights, have we let those get away from us? Have we sort of lost our bargaining power or our leverage over China as we keep moving the goalposts on what we're willing to accept?
Well, I think that nobody tells China what to do. Those days are over with. The instruments that we've had for dealing with human rights in China, many of which were supported by our aid program, the conservative government has lost even those instruments. So it's now a matter of making a kind of moral appeal to the Chinese, talking to them about practicalities in cases like the Garretts, and trying to do it in the right way. Freedom, democracy, human rights, rule of law are not good starting points in a conversation with the Chinese, even if many of those substantive issues are the kinds of things Xi Jinping is really wrestling with right now.
And of course, when we saw the unrest and the protests in Hong Kong, it did remind many of us of Tiananmen and raised concerns that there might be a similarly brutal crackdown. It didn't happen. Do you worry, is it possible that China today could resort to the kinds of behaviors that would make it very uncomfortable to be a close trading partner?
Well, I think people will be trading with China as we trade with the United States and other countries through a lot of ups and downs. I think that China's present global status, its involvement is not just a trading partner, but in determining the rules of international finance, make a Tiananmen Square too unlikely, and that what we're seeing in Hong Kong is the kind of pattern. This is not a soft and fuzzy Chinese state, but it is a state that is going to be relatively careful in large-scale repression, particularly on its peripheries.
So when we consider the kind of the politics around this, and you kind of have cataloged this, our history of relationships, there is a sense that that Stephen Harper has a bit of a kind of a mixed bag here, in the sense that there's an economic message that may well play well, and delivering on trade is something he's promised to do. But there's also a sense that China is unpopular with his base, that when Canadians are asked, there's a sense of mistrust around China. We'd rather not trade with China, according to some polls. So where does that land for him in this kind of pre-election period?
Well, I think that's exactly the right question in a pre-election period. I don't think whatever Mr. Harper would like to do in playing bigger ball with the Chinese is possible, partly because of negativity in public opinion, also because of the conflict around his cabinet table. Passing a foreign investment promotion and protection agreement proved extremely difficult inside the Conservative Party. So in that context, I think the big story in Canadian China policy is going to be what Mr. Harper does when he returns from China. In essence, prime ministers, presidents everywhere have complicated relationships with the Chinese. But in our case, it's how you manage those, how you present them, and how you keep from fanning the negativity that Canadians and domestic publics have. And that's something Mr. Harper has not shown that he's been willing to do in past. But in coming into the future, it's pretty hard to see how it's unavoidable.
We are also, of course, having all these discussions about becoming a currency trading center for the yuan. How important would that be in the sense, will it actually open up trade business between Canadian businesses and China?
It will have some positive effects, and this is something that's been thought about or kicked around for a few years. It is not a major initiative or breakthrough. But it is something that will facilitate trade and is something, I think, that the Conservative government is trying to show as a symbol that it can do things with the Chinese. In baseball terms, this is somewhere between a bunt and a single, but it's a valuable one, and at least somebody will get on base.
All right, we've got to leave it there, Paul. We appreciate your time today.
I really appreciate being with you.
Paul Evans, professor at the Institute of Asian Research, University of British Columbia.